Look, with the advent of social media, it's getting harder and harder for me to hide my toxic behaviour and, quite frankly, my hate preaching. You'll remember my famous, some say infamous, white speech. People like Andrew Tate and other fine Muslims have taken this to extremes, and their and my definition of masculinity is quite the same. I think if we work together, we can ensure that toxic behaviours like this can be driven underground and not exposed by the media or even the social media. We'll just keep it for the privacy of the home. Women and girls, of course, will continue to be at the receiving end. But that way, everybody benefits, and we don't need to talk about it or report it. So all the wrongdoing gets buried, and I look great, as if I've really made a difference, even though I actually don't have a Scooby about what I'm actually doing. I'm great. Hey, hey, hey. Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Good evening, John. I'm all good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. I'm well. I'm well. Good to see you again after your little foray into All In last Friday.
That was fun. Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
was
it
good. It
was.
was long. I was knackered by the end of it, but no, it was a good laugh.
Yeah,
It's nice to have Adam on as well.
yeah, it was. It was. We should hopefully get more of Adam on, but we'll see how that goes. Right. So wait, let's get straight into it. Let's. The internet is literally melting down. Right.
It's
Twitter is a fire.
it's
What's going on, Ed? What's going on?
well, obviously it's Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin, and by the state of the internet, you would have thought that nobody had ever interviewed Putin ever in the history of Putin's life, and that, I mean, it's just, and I mean, do I trust Putin 100%? Obviously not. Do I trust Tucker Carlson 100%? Obviously not. But what I do find highly amusing is all of the people that are going absolutely mental about the fact that someone is having the audacity to interview Putin. And I think top of my list so far, well, one and two on the list of favorites are Steve Rosenberg of the accursed and despised BBC, who's their
Mm,
Moscow correspondent,
yeah,
and Christian Amanpour,
yeah.
whose record of journalistic integrity is not amazing.
No,
He
my
used to be good.
yeah, my favourites is Ed Krasenstein
Oh, I have those two blocked. The two that.
and and
Oh,
and Guy Verhofstadt. He's lost it. He's really
uh,
lost it.
yeah, no. For Hofstadt he's I've tweeted about it before. If there was a better advertisement for Brexit, I can't think of what it is because the guy's a fascist pig.
Oh yeah,
He really is. I
I
mean,
know.
he's just every single opinion that I have about a particular thing happening in the world, I can almost guarantee you that Verhofstadt will have exactly the opposite view to
Yeah,
mine.
he's a bit
Uh,
like me to you.
no, you and I agree more frequently than him, but at
Yeah.
least you've got some integrity. That guy
Why?
doesn't strike me as, I don't
Thank
know.
you, Ed. Thank you.
Well, he was Verhofstadt earlier on. He was waving a tweet. He posted a tweet with a picture of a journalist, so called, that the Russians had arrested
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
put in front of a judge. It turns out to be a CIA agent, for crying
yeah,
out loud.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
know, and
what?
who actually did something wrong. Whereas, I think I replied to Guy saying, "At least he's still alive." Rip Gonzo Lira. You know, because they
You got a
didn't.
bit echoey, John.
Oh, have I? They didn't do him any good, did they?
I don't know, maybe it's your position.
Oh, okay. We'll see.
No, because
Right.
that you're not sounding echoey now, but maybe it's
Uh
just
it was probably
because
because I was shouting.
him's a you're out.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Rob, the interview doesn't drop until 11 o'clock tonight. For those interested, we are ahead of the interview. The interview will be on Tucker's website and on X, Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly it's going up on Twitter. I'm not calling it X because X is a stupid name.
Me too.
And nobody should call it X because then maybe Mr. Musk will get the message that he just what the hell, Elon? Come on, seriously.
He's just a big kid, isn't he? He really is. I mean, I don't trust Elon
What's
either. I think he's very suspect, but he is really a big kid, and I think there's a bit of autism in there as well because he's just his whole demeanor is just weird, you know.
I've always thought him a very strange person, and I don't trust anyone who. I mean, men traditionally have a receding hairline, but if you
Mm.
look at pictures of Elon when he was in PayPal,
Yeah.
his hairline's actually unreceded. Um,
Yes, it has.
and yeah, I mean, so that's hair implants, which in principle everyone is free to approach hair loss in their own way. Some shave it off, some if you've
Yeah.
got more money than God, then maybe you buy hair implants. But
So,
still,
so
I've always had issues with him. I mean, he's friends with Peter Thiel, and if you spent
yeah.
any time paying attention to Johnny Vedmore, you'll know that Peter Thiel is not. I mean, he's connected to the CIA, he's connected to Facebook. It's all just
Yeah, I used to
plus
watch
PayPal.
yeah, I used to watch Leo Laporte um when he did his, well, he still does them, I believe, and that's where I first started watching Natalie Morris. Of course, her and Clayton went on to Redacted, but John C. Dvorak used to be on Leo Laporte's show, and he was hilarious. Dvorak,
Again,
so Dvorak was ex PC Magazine, I think. He was a commentator in PC Magazine, a writer,
hmm
and he's one of the guys, I think. Yeah, he was very early into IT, so he was actually quite funny. He's quite witty, quite a dry wit. And him and Adam Curry do No Agenda Show. That that's the one that got me into doing this kind of crap that we're doing just now. So we're a poor man's No Agenda Show, I would say. Although they're audio only, and 2 shows a week. We're at the moment we're putting something out every day. So if you like what we're doing, consider dropping us a little donation because these shows are coming to you ad free. We're not monetizing these shows. These live shows are coming to you totally ad free. So you'll not get a break from our incessant chatter all throughout this show. No adverts, no escape, no toilet time for you guys. Maybe for us, but not for you. Yeah, well, John always wants money, Cellini, because believe it or not, John's pretty broke, and my good friend Ben's even more broker. So yeah, if you can, it's always good to drop us a little donation. We do appreciate it. And we especially appreciate the people who have rejoined our Twitter, not Twitter, our YouTube as asylum seekers. So thank you, Amy and Bex. Appreciate it. And Ben appreciates it also. I tell you what I want to talk. I want to talk about Ben a little bit. Ben Davidson, that is. You know, the space weather man.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a fan of his.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually used to pay him every week, every month for his show.
Okay.
You know, I used to donate to it. I had a standing order donation. That's the kind of thing that we can do as well. If you use Kofi, you can set up a standing order donation to us. But yeah, I used to support Ben. Unfortunately, I don't anymore because I don't have the money to do it. But I think he still does pretty good work, and I still appreciate the fact that you can listen to him without having to pay much as you can with us. But apart from that, he went into the chemtrails thing today. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. And do you follow what's he called? Oh, Dane Wigington. He's geoengineeringwatch.org.
No, I haven't. I haven't followed him.
You
No.
should check him out. He's done
Okay.
a really good film called The Dimming.
Right.
And I mean, I would absolutely love to see a discussion between Ben Davidson and Dane Wigington, because
Okay.
Dane is,
Nothing to
I
do
mean,
with
he's
Biden, the dimming. No.
no, no, that's the father with Anthony Hopkins, where
Yeah.
yeah, demented old Brandon.
Yeah, I know.
No, but I mean, The Dimming, it's worth watching, and Dane Wigington is as knowledgeable and serious about his area of research as Ben Davidson is about his. And I mean, Geoengineering Watch has actually paid for NOAA sampling planes to go up through whatever the hell it is that's being obviously sprayed into the sky.
Well,
And
he says it's cloud seeding,
that,
which is it could
which,
well be, but I mean,
well,
you don't need to cloud seed in the UK. Let's be honest. It
yeah,
rains
but
enough anyway.
he says it's barium salts, but it's not, because there's aluminium there as well. I don't know if anyone's noticed, they probably have, but after it rains, once it dries out, your car is always covered in a thin white powder now. And the
That's for people
aluminium.
that have cars. I don't have a car
All right, yeah, well, you can see it on
because
other
I'm
people's
broke.
cars. We can see it on other people's cars after it rains.
Yeah, okay.
And look on with envy and cry a little bit, you sad bastard.
I wish I had a car to get some aluminium salts on it. Then I could lick it and hasten the dementia so I could be happy in my old age instead of just a
But there's
grumpy
also, I
old
mean,
bugger.
but I mean, Dana's actually, his whole thing with the dimming started because he lives completely off grid in near Mount Shasta in California.
Like Shasta.
And yeah, and
Dodgy,
he's
dodgy,
actually
dodgy.
well, yeah, I mean, there is that, but he's actually a former Bechtel engineering guy, and his house was actually on the cover of like a renewable energies magazine, because he was completely, he had solar, he had wind, and he had hydro, so he was completely off grid and totally energy independent. But he noticed that at one point,
Well, hold on. I have to stop you there. I'm sorry, Ed, but what the fuck do you mean, Rob Bruce? Not missed much yet. I mean, that's just like gold that we're giving you for free, and you say you haven't missed much for people that turned up late.
Oh, don't start him off, for crying out loud, Bob. He's a sensitive little soul, and he's also a grumpy, miserable Scotsman. So
Carry on.
it's best not to trigger him. Anyway, so just to cut a long story short, Dane noticed that his solar panel output had dropped dramatically.
Yep.
And he posits that it's got something to do with this solar radiation management, the experiments that they're doing over our heads.
Well, I don't know. I think what you need to do is you need to go to NASA. Right,
NASA,
no, listen.
I don't trust not a space agent.
Yeah, I know. Never a straight answer and all that. But
I mean,
go to NASA, right? Because Ben Davidson actually posted this the other day. Go to NASA and look at their latest it's an interactive chart that shows you live what's in the atmosphere, and it shows you like CO2, it shows you sand and particulates and stuff, and it shows you where it all is. Right? So it's really, really interesting, because it could be particulates. Because you think about it, we get a shitload of Sahara sand here. I mean, I think you maybe think it's coming from the chemtrails, but it's not.
No,
it does blow. The dust from the Sahara does blow up here on occasion,
I've seen there was a really I mean, this is a bit rabbit holey, but there's a video of it's a massive line of tractors in the Sahara that are basically pumping dust into the sky.
Why?
I think again it's those climate change nutters that are basically determined that, well, they're assuming that the Earth's getting warmer, even though for the first time in I don't know how many years there's a thin layer of ice over
Adriatic, yes, we covered that on Monday. The Bay of
So
Trieste.
yeah, so it's obviously global boiling.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
it's
I'd have
well,
to,
what's
I'll
what?
see if I can dig up this video and I'll post it on
Yeah,
Twitter and I'll tag you in it so you can see it. But yeah, it was a line of tractors pummeling sand
nice.
into the sky.
So what's the
I don't know.
temperature? What's the temperature down there in sunny Brighton?
It's probably about 4 or 5 degrees. It's not
Okay.
particularly warm. I mean, my thing says 10, but we have wind, so it's the wind
Yeah, so
chill
the wind chill,
factor.
right? But it's -2 here
Yeah,
without the wind chill, right?
yeah, but you live in the frozen north.
Yeah, I
I
do.
mean,
Beyond the wall.
you have wildlings, and I mean, we're probably going to end up. I mean, with the way 2024 is going, we're going to have White Walkers.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think we've already
I don't
got
think
there.
Hadrian's Wall was built for no reason.
I think it was built for a very good reason, to keep out the White Walkers and the gingers. I think it was built to keep the gingers out, and it's failed. It's failed on both counts.
Yeah, this you can't stop the gingers. They're
Oh.
yeah, no, it's no stopping them.
Apparently, it was snowing in Brixton today.
Yeah, I saw that video. My brother lives in Peckham. I haven't actually asked him whether there was snow in Peckham, but yeah, because we're near the sea, and Brighton has its own little climate, so we very rarely get snow. I mean, we'll get it coming out of the sky, but it never settles.
Right.
So, who's excited about Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin? Because
Well,
even Ben Davidson. Oh, actually, no. Let's just go back to the whole chemtrails versus not chemtrails thing.
yeah,
I would suggest watch the dimming, and then we should do a show about it and
yeah.
dedicate an actual show to it, and
Okay.
just look through.
And where
look
is this
through some
dimming?
of-
Is it on Rumble or YouTube or?
Just go to geoengineeringwatch.org.
Okay, watch it there.
I'll put it in geoengineeringwatch.org.
Cool.
Put it in chat for people.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, started noticing these things in the sky in the late 90s. And prior to that period, when I'd grown up as a kid, it was always traditional blue skies with little white fluffy clouds. And I can remember untold road trips with my parents in Zambia, where you literally play the game of what clouds can you see, and you look for animals. I mean, I've always had that kind of imagination. So, but then the planes started spewing out something, and that something started spreading across the sky.
Well, it depends where you are, because I mean, as you know, I spent
get them in Egypt.
I spent about
I didn't.
2 years living in France. You don't get it in France.
I think it depends on the area. I mean, when I was in Holland visiting my mum last year.
Yeah, but Holland's in the north.
Yeah, but I mean, in Dahab when I was on diving holiday, there was 2 days where I saw some things, trails or whatever.
Contrails.
But I didn't see them. No, contrails are different because they don't stick around and they don't spread out over the sky.
That's what I used to see in France. You would see a plane go over and you'd see a contrail because it would last about between 20 and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's just basically a little line sticking out the back of the airplane,
and it would be totally gone in a minute. Totally gone.
Yeah. So I mean, I fully accept that there are such things as contrails, but that shite that we get in the sky that just ends up ruining what would have been a nice blue sky, and it makes you wonder what's in it. I mean, there's all kinds of rabbit hole related stuff.
Oh.
So I think a chemtrails rabbit hole would be
I mean,
an interesting thing to do.
I know we do cloud seed. I mean, it's not hidden. We do cloud seed.
Absolutely
we
not.
have cloud seeded, but for the thing is, there's no reason to be cloud seeding all the time. That's the thing, because
exactly,
except.
Well, this is where you have to really watch the dimming, because according to Dane Wigington, this climate modification has been going on since the 60s. I mean, there's patents going back at least 50 years relating to geoengineering and cloud seeding. And yeah, I mean, the Chinese have done it, the Australians have done it.
Yeah.
There's even stories that I've read that it's possible to control the weather with the next rad, the next generation radar systems. And if you recall, going back to our 9/11 show, there's that very interesting thing that not many people knew about, was that there was a hurricane headed towards New York City in the days prior to 9/11, and then it suddenly veered off and went out into the Atlantic for no apparent reason. That wasn't its projected track. It wasn't normal behavior for a hurricane.
No, it wasn't.
There's also videos that are on Geoengineering Watch of NextRad systems being used to control.
Okay, right. So
weather.
Ben was very dismissive of HARP.
Well,
he basically poo-pooed it. He said it can't do what you talk about. It won't affect these things because most of them are insulators anyway. So how are you going to affect them? So he was very dismissive of it.
I'm not that cognizant with the physics, and I was always crap at physics at school. But from what I understand it, one of the ways that HARP can be used is it's an ionospheric heater. That's its public stated goal. It's about doing stuff to the ionosphere.
And I thought it was a communication device. I thought it was for communication with submarines.
No, because HARP stands for the High Altitude Ionospheric Research Project.
Okay.
And it was about studying the outer layers of the atmosphere, and the idea behind it was that they would pump massive amounts of microwave energy into the ionosphere and essentially heat it up. And then when you do that, it expands it, and in doing that, I mean, again, I don't ask me to explain it all, but as far as I understand it, you can essentially expand a piece of the ionosphere by heating it up, and in doing that, you push other things out of the way. So you can essentially move things around and potentially influence the jet stream currents that run through the upper atmosphere. And I mean, in theory, I guess at different power levels, you could have it bounce. I don't know. I mean, it's supposedly the HARP facility in Alaska was closed down and given over to academics. But then there's also stories that I've heard that there are miniaturized HARP facilities all around the world. There's also pictures of giant radar bubble things on these massive deep sea platforms where these things get wheeled out. This is all rabbit hole stuff. I mean, who knows? Who knows whether? But watch the dimming, because, like I said, Dane Wigington, he strikes me as knowing his field as well as Ben Davidson does his, which is why it would be absolutely fascinating to have those two on a panel discussion and just have a not to agree, or just to kind of see if there's a meeting of minds. And they both might disagree with each other and end up hating each other, but they're both very, very smart dudes, and they've both got quite well developed and strong opinions about things. And I mean, Dane Wigington, Dane does a weekly, he calls it the Bad News Broadcast. It's an hour-long show that's, I mean, it goes out on radio stations in the US, but he also has a channel on BitChute. And it's one of those ones I can't listen to it every week, because it really is quite depressing, because he'll just go through, essentially just do a rundown of the news and explain how it relates to his theories about geoengineering. And I mean, from his perspective, he reckons that we're very, very close to a tipping point where the biosphere is going to become uninhabitable.
Why?
And
why does he think that?
Because of runaway warming. I mean, like I said, he's done a whole hour and a half ish documentary about it that you really need to watch, because he lays it all out in a lot of detail.
Yeah, okay, I'll have a look at it. I'm not convinced because we've been talking about runaway warming since before we were meant to be
Yeah,
having
but
an
it's
ice
not the
age.
same. No, but it's essentially that. What's the best way to put this? Basically, Wigington thinks that we've been mucking around with the climate for so long that they're at the point of losing control over it, which is why we have these weird temperature fluctuations. Listen,
Do you
I've
think
just
we've ever
I'm
had? Let's be honest, Ed. Right? The fucking Met Office can't tell you if it's going to rain in an hour's time. Never mind what
no,
it's going to do tomorrow. Right? So weather forecasting's all they're sitting there with all these fancy. I mean, some of the biggest, fastest computers in the world for weather forecasting, and they can't work out what the climate's doing. So do you really
um
think? Do you really think that us piddling about with some chemicals and salts in the upper atmosphere is really going to make that big a difference? Really? I'm being
oh
very cynical here.
yeah, no, I would expect no less from you. I to be honest, I don't know because I'm a layperson who has discovered interesting information,
Hmm.
and in Ben Davidson's case, it's the Earth disaster documentary, which is about an hour and a half. And in Dane Wigington's case, it's the dimming, which is also about an hour and a half. And both of them basically say the world is going to end. So we've got one
Yeah.
which is Ben Davidson, which says
Well, yeah, but
it's a 12,000 year.
it's
I
going
mean,
to be a solar event, isn't it?
well, yeah, and Dane Wigington reckons it's going to be some sort of climactic collapse brought around by humans screwing around with things we don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we talk about global warming just briefly, all we need to do is have a look at what's going on in the rest of the solar system. And most of the other planets are warming as well. So I don't think we've got an awful lot to do with them, do we?
No,
No,
absolutely not. And
no. So I
it's
think I think it might be the sun.
yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of evidence there's plenty of hard scientific evidence that shows a 12,000 year cycle of events, including
Yeah,
extinctions, and there's also strange evidence of tropical fossils in Antarctica, which is explained by the Earth crust
yes,
displacement
yeah, I know.
theories that
That,
that
that's
Ben
that's
Ben talks
horrible.
about.
Yeah, that's just horrible because if that happens, you've no chance. That's the what one was that? What was disaster movie was that?
2012.
Yeah, yeah,
Charles
yeah.
Hapgood, and I mean, funnily enough, Charles Hapgood was an actual person,
Aye, yeah,
and he kind of destroyed his own because there used to be a science of catastrophism because the idea that there were global catastrophes, it actually used to be a mainstream thing, and I mean, back say 100 years ago, there were serious scientists that had a serious view about it. Um, and then I think Hapgood, it was 1950s, but don't quote me on that.
yeah.
Um, and he was also connected to the CIA, and he essentially wrote a book pretty much poo-pooing the whole notion of Earth crust displacement, and he expounded the theory in such a way that it was easy to tear holes in. And what Ben Davidson is suggesting is different. It's not. It's about how the Earth crust displacement happens, where you get a weakening of the Earth's geomagnetic field. You get the solar micronova, which essentially causes the layer of the Earth's crust in between the crust and the mantle, which holds the crust, because the Earth itself is a big ball of spinning magma and metal and stuff, and over the top
Allegedly,
of that, you've got the crust.
allegedly.
Well, yeah, allegedly. Let's not. Let's. We're already talking about one rabbit hole. Let's not disappear down another one at the same time. That's never works out very well. Anyway, so the theory with Earth crust displacement is that there's a layer, I can't remember what it's called, that acts like a glue, which stops the crust from spinning around. And every 12,000 years, something happens which
Oh
unglues
god.
it, and we get a shift
Yeah,
of roughly 90 degrees. So
which wipes us
in a
out
hundred, yeah, in 100
effectively.
years, yeah. And one of the interesting things is that the projection is sometime between 2030 and 2050. Ben reckons the 2040s. which I find quite suspicious given our friends at the UN and their Agenda 2030 and 2050. They're 2 years that are constantly being banged on about.
Yeah, it's quite depressing, isn't it? But you know what? I think Elon, in some respects, has got the right idea in that we do need to get off planet if we want to survive as a species. Need to have a
Yeah, but
second.
if this cataclysm, if there's a solar micronova,
Yeah. Well,
then
you haven't
that
heard. Well, you haven't heard. You haven't heard my. I haven't finished yet, so you don't know what I'm going to say,
uh,
right? So I think Elon is, a base established out with the this planet and certainly somewhere in the solar system. I think he's picked the wrong planet because I don't think Mars is a place to do it. Because if you do it on Mars, you're going to have to dig underground to protect yourself because there's no atmosphere on Mars, right? And there's precious little water. I think where you want to be is Titan, Saturn's
yeah,
moon,
I mean,
because
one of
you've got you've got a nitrogen atmosphere which is going to protect you from cosmic rays and solar radiation, which Mars won't, right? You've got a big magnetic field in the form of Saturn, which is protecting you from the cosmic radiation as well, which Mars doesn't because it doesn't have a magnetic field, right? So I think he's picked the wrong planet. You need to go to Titan, and why waste time pissing about going to Mars?
well,
Go to Titan because Titan. What else has Titan got? Loads of access to water.
yeah, and you know where we have to go before we can go to any of those places?
No, we don't need to go to the moon.
Yeah, we do.
No, we
Because the moon,
don't.
no, well, no, because the moon is an excellent drop off point.
You
Because
don't need to
you
stage
can,
on the moon. You can stage in Earth orbit.
yeah, that's true. But then I still,
That's true.
I mean, how are we going to get past? I mean, okay, there's theoretically a way to get out of the Van Allen belt,
Whoa,
but
whoa,
if it
hold
was
on.
so
Right,
easy
okay.
to get, no, so easy to get to the moon,
Yeah.
we would have done it since the last US moon mission. The Chinese would have been, the Indians would have been. I mean, why did the Indians in 2020, whatever it was, send an unmanned
2022?
probe?
I don't know.
I mean, I realize we're probably not giving them not enough aid money to pay for a manned mission, but still, I mean, why haven't the Chinese done it? Why haven't the Russians done it? I mean, why didn't the Russians do it after the Americans?
Yeah,
And
because they
how
couldn't.
did I mean?
Because,
We got a whole.
well, did the Americans actually do it?
So I'm still skeptical about. I
Very
mean,
much.
Elon has all these dreams of going to Mars, but unless we can actually get back to the moon
Right.
successfully,
So what
it's
I don't get, Ed, and if you've looked at this at all, plan for going to the moon with Artemis is that Artemis will launch, be refilled in Earth orbit, and then go to the moon, where it will dock with Elon's lander, right? Which will then land on the moon, right? So it'll be a proper spaceship landing on the moon, right? Now, to do this, it's estimated they will need between 16 and 24 tanking flights into low Earth orbit to refill the two spacecraft that are going to the moon before you even head for the moon. Right? So, can someone explain to me how we did it with one spaceship there and back? One spaceship there and back, which is actually now smaller than Elon's big dick-shaped rocket.
mm-hmm.
So how did we do it with one spaceship when it's going to take at least between 18 and 26 spaceships to go to the moon and back?
Well, I don't think we did. I mean, we've got a whole rabbit hole that people can explore if they want to. I mean, it's we both came to the same conclusion that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
like I said before, I went into that research thinking it did happen. I'm a massive space junkie. I
Yeah.
was into the space shuttle, and I mean, there was one time when I think I was about 9, and we were in Europe on holiday with my family. It's when my parents were still together, and my dad took my brother to see the Arsenal play live, and I wanted to stay in the hotel and watch the space shuttle launch.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I realized I was gutted because the space shuttle launch lasted all of about 15 minutes, and then I was stuck in the hotel room on my own with nothing but bloody sports on television, because this is back in the days before satellite and cable. So it was literally just garbage on TV, absolutely gutted. But I wouldn't have wanted to sit in the bloody football ground anyway.
Yeah, yeah, quite right. I'm quite disturbed by Adam's comment there. I think he needs to seek help.
Yeah, he needs help, and his children are going to need counselling later on in life
Yes,
as well.
they
I mean,
will.
that's a ridiculous counselling bill you're setting yourself up there for, Adam.
It's
I
just
mean,
therapy.
it's almost I mean, it's almost like someone needs to call social services or something. That's cruelty. It's like you're telling you're telling your kids that their dead hamster has gone to the moon.
Well,
Ah,
I'd like to say thank you, everyone. All these new names that are appearing in the chat. It's good to see you all. Amanda Lavaghi,
there's a few
Janet,
that I recognised from
um,
Twitter.
Ray. I think we've had Ray before, haven't we? Gunky Fadgets. I like that. That's a nice
Yeah,
one.
he's a
Um,
fellow memer.
yeah.
People should follow him. He does excellent memes. I think
Alphabet
it's him.
Cats. Well, actually, Alphabet Cat. If you want to get through the Van Allen belts, you could surround yourself with water, couldn't you? Because water's excellent at stopping radiation.
Yeah, but how are you going to get enough water? I mean, you
Oh,
need
you've got
scuba tanks.
16 tanking flights anyway. Why not make it 32?
And the other thing about going to Mars is, who the hell would want to go to Mars with Elon Musk?
Well, no. Well, see, right. So this actually is a bit political, and this maybe brings us back towards the interview with Vladimir, because if you go to Mars, right, or Titan, regardless of where you go, you're going to end up. You're not going to be in a democracy. You're probably going to be in a semi-military installation, aren't you? And effectively, you're going to have a commander, or, as I like to use the term, a benevolent dictator. And I've always
Yeah.
advocated for a benevolent dictator, because if you have a benevolent dictator, they actually will look after you better than a democracy will, because a democracy is always at odds with itself, you know. Because there's always half the team wanting to do something else, and the other half are wanting to do whatever, and there's always this, or even thirds, you know. So there's always this fight as to what the team should be doing. But with a benevolent dictator, you have no option. So yeah, maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Well, the thing with benevolent dictators, and in principle, I agree with you, because there is something about, I mean, even if you just look through the whole last 3 or 4 years, people are generally crying out to be told what to do. It's one of the most frequent questions that you hear people ask on other podcasts. Just all of them, all of the medical ones, all of the freedom ones. There's always this question: what do we do? What can I do? What should I do? And so there's something about human nature that seems to need some sort of leader figure, whether it's a king or. The problem that I've got with benevolent dictators is that every so often a good one does come along. I mean, one could possibly, without wanting to offend anyone, perhaps describe Mr. Putin as a benevolent dictator, but he's not, because Russia has, I mean, they have elections, they have a democratic system, but
I think Gaddafi was probably the closest we've seen to proper.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Actually, yeah, no, he's a much better example than Putin. Because he was a dictator.
Yeah.
But if you look at what Libyan society was like under Gaddafi and what it's like now, I think the vast majority of Libyans would probably very much like to have Mr. Gaddafi back. I mean, there's the whole the Great River Project and some of. I mean, he was properly crazy guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he was not a not completely. I suspect there might have been one or two cans short of that six pack, but he genuinely cared about his people and he genuinely
Yeah.
cared about Africa and
Well,
all
and
of
I
the
think,
reasons that.
yeah.
Not gone.
Well, I think even bringing it closer to home, right? You notice it happening here. You notice it happening with the stronger leaders generally. People like, and I loathe the woman, right? But people love Nicola Sturgeon because they thought she was on their side. The normies thought she was on their side and she was standing up to bat for them. And they still freaking love her. They still support her, right? Despite everything that's come out, they still think that she didn't do that much wrong. And then think back to like Margaret Thatcher, right? She's a very strong woman, very strong leader, and people loved her as well.
And her impact on
Yeah,
large swathes of the country was
yeah,
absolutely catastrophic. I mean,
yes, it
the
was.
mining communities and stuff to this day have never recovered. And
Well, yeah, to be fair, it was always coming for them, but
yeah, but
some.
if you look at how much those coal mining
Hmm?
communities,
Oh
you
yeah, I
look at
know,
how
decimated.
much well, I mean, if you look at how much coal China's buying from Canada, or if we didn't have those green zealots, we could actually be. I mean, because there's plenty of clean coal technology, but we've basically just dissed our whole industry. I mean, we're now closing the last steel plant because
Oh,
it's
I know, man.
uneconomical and because net zero. And I mean, it's and at the same time, we've
Well,
got all these politicians wanting to go to war and wanting
yeah,
conscription and
yeah.
how you
I,
look, you don't. It's so frustrating.
do you think that's just the fear factor and trying to keep people under control,
Yes, I think that
or
they're
or
losing
or
control of the fear because they thought they could keep that fear going. They
yeah,
thought that because what they've been doing ever since 2020 is they've been imposing a bunch of fear and then they'll loosen it up and then something else will come along and we had the nasty thing at the beginning and then we had Ukraine
mhm, yeah,
but they're going from one thing to another and underneath all of that is constantly drumming into people's heads this fear about climate change, especially the kids. I mean, the
I know.
indoctrination that's happening in schools is absolutely frightening because
You,
the amount of stress that they're
I
putting
know.
those poor
I mean,
kids under.
the whole thing's crazy. My daughter comes up to me the other day and goes, "What about all this conscription? Am I going to be forced to join the army?" And I goes, "Don't worry, don't worry about it." She goes, "How come?" And I goes, "You can't see." Could just get milk bottle glasses. And she's like, "Oh right, okay." Just she's away quite happy now.
Ah, dear. But it's that and that the problem that I've got with it is that fear makes people ill.
Yeah,
And that stress makes people ill, and
it
there's no
does.
reason for it
It
because
does.
I mean, unless you want to start really freaking out about a solar micronova or something like that, which there's nothing we can do about anyway. But
Well,
it's
exactly, Ed. Exactly. Don't worry
um,
about things you can't change. Just worry
yeah,
about the things you can.
absolutely. And I think it's just evil and wrong what the government does. I mean, whether it's the whole World War III, and it's all in lockstep. As soon
Oh
as
yeah.
those bloody governments all start saying the same thing at the same time, you know it's not coming from them.
Jeez,
And that
yeah.
but they're so obvious.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. It isn't because right. So the thing that I don't get, and I really don't get this, is the people that think that we're still a world power and think we've still got, they think we've still got
I know a few of those.
an effective army, navy, and air force, and we really don't. I think we'd struggle. I think we would struggle. We struggle to do anything these days. I mean, we can't even put an aircraft carrier to sea. You know, when
We've
it
got
should
two
have been.
of them, and they're both in dock.
I mean,
One of them's got propeller problems.
yeah,
We've got HMS Diamond, which is this much vaunted warship that
yeah,
is now coming back with technical problems, but that's after a massively sustained attack by the Houthis. So
yeah. And we've
whether
put
the
four,
ships,
we put four, we put four Navy warships in mothballs because we don't have enough sailors to man them.
yeah,
Right? All the cruise missiles on the destroyers aren't there because we didn't buy them, right?
it's the yeah,
So they've got gems in there instead, right? I mean, we're not the power we used to be, and it's sad to say, but we've got to stop pretending to be a world player because we aren't. We need to lick our wounds, we need to come back, and we need to rebuild ourselves. And I think there's an argument to say that, you know, any sovereign nation should have some basics, right? You should be able to make steel.
yeah.
You
You
should
should be able to feed yourself.
Yeah, you should be able to feed yourself as much as possible, you know, with the basics, right? And you should be able to mine resources for energy,
Mm.
right?
I mean, we're a rich island.
Yeah, we
and
are.
If
But
if
you're not allowed to
we
use
actually, well, no, because of all of the idiotic stuff that the government's followed. Because I mean, I think something we can probably all agree on is that the government is not working in the interests of the people. They
it.
work
No.
in their own interests. I don't think they even care what the interests of the people are.
Well,
The only time they really express any
yeah,
interest in it is when they need someone to vote for them, so they can have the sham of
that's
of
exactly what
being
we say.
democratically elected.
What do we say on Chasing Dissent? Two aims of government, right? Control the people, feather their own nest. That's the aims of government. You
Yep.
know, they're not out for you. They're not. They don't care about you. They really don't. And anyone that says they do is lying to get your vote.
Yeah. And now they're not even. I mean, they don't even really pretend to have policies. It's just they both have plans. They're like the Conservatives have got a plan, Labour have got a plan, and they're all just useless. I mean, this is why I turn Keir Starmer into Beaker and Roland
Yeah.
Rat and Rishi Sunak. See, I can't even. I see Rishi Sunak now, and I just think Roland Rat.
Yeah.
And it's just I'd call it a comedy of errors, but it's not even funny anymore.
It's not.
And then you look at
It's
the
not.
alternatives. I mean, we got reform. Yeah, okay. How's that any different?
Well, and this is getting quite political, so we'll probably move on from it. But
Yeah, no,
you know,
we're not here for politics.
we're on to the fact that can't change a political system from the inside. Nobody's ever done it in the past. Just think about that. Nobody's ever changed a political system from the inside. Change
And it was
always
a good
comes
point
externally.
Yeah, and there was a good point that you made on the All In last Friday.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about it in the context of the farmer protests, but sometimes maybe a bit of anarchy would be better. Do we even need a government? I mean, we need to have the streets cleaned.
We need smaller government. We definitely need smaller government. The government's too big, way too big, too intrusive. It's way too big. It's poking its. And I was actually thinking today, and you know what? Completely shoot me down because I could be off the wall here. But why are we even taxed, right? Because
Tax was originally brought in because of war.
Well, it was brought in to pay.
And actually,
It was It was brought in to pay for the Napoleonic War, right?
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
it's fiat banking.
And it was rescinded for a couple of years, and then they thought, oh no, we'll bring it back in, right? But here's the point, right? See if we stop taxing ourselves, right? So the government stops taxing you, okay? You then have a lot more money to spend on goods and services, right? So you buy the goods and services that you need. So if you need your bin emptied every week, you pay for that good and service, right? If you want your bin emptied every month, you pay for that service because you're not getting taxed and you're not getting it enforced on you. If your house burns down and you haven't paid your levy to the fire brigade, then that's your problem.
Yeah, but John, that's you're operating on the basis that the current money system that we've got is the best one. And my if you made me
Well,
prime minister, gave me ultimate power tomorrow for a day,
yeah,
24 hours, I could do one thing that would fundamentally change everything
back to the
else.
gold standard.
No, well, no, not even that. But you fundamentally change how money is created,
Oh
and
yeah,
you come up
yeah.
with a better system, whether it's something like Bitcoin or whatever.
Right.
But you
Well,
take the creation of money out of the hands of private bankers.
yeah.
You do
Okay.
something
Right.
else with it
Okay.
because
But
ultimately the thing
that's
is
not
why
the
this
answer. Bitcoin's
no, but
not
this
the
is
answer to anything because
but John,
Bitcoin
forget about the
disappears.
medium. No, I don't want to argue about the medium, but this is something about the whole monetary system that has always done my head in. Why do countries have to borrow money when it's the country that's issuing the money?
Yeah.
So for me, if I want to buy a house or buy a car or whatever, fair enough, I borrow some money. But if it's the government saying, I want to build a school, or I want to build a road, or I want to develop some government have to go to private individuals and say, lend me some money, when all you're doing is you're lending back pounds that I mean, it's crazy. You just go to the
Yeah.
treasury,
I
you say,
know.
right, print me up a whole bunch of money. You take that money to a bunch of road workers and you say, fix the roads. And then in doing that, you wouldn't be creating any inflation because you're just adding money to the circulation. As long as you're not printing it to spunk it on wars and stuff, and you're actually doing something concrete with it, fixing roads, fixing houses, building new houses, homing people, doing the stuff that society needs, developing the water infrastructure, all of that stuff. Why the hell does the government have to borrow money to do
Well,
that?
it
Why
only
can't they
needs.
just go to the treasury, say to the treasury, you print money, then you take a whole
Yeah.
big stack of freaking pound notes, you go to a road maintenance company, you say, here, road
Right.
maintenance company, here's a bunch
Yeah.
of money, fix the bloody
Right.
roads.
So here's the point, and this is where the money system doesn't work, right? Because you money is created at the point of debt, right? So when you go and
No,
get
but that's the whole point.
yes, yes, I
This is
know.
the point that I'm trying to
Right.
make
Yes,
is
I
that money
understand
should
that.
not be
No.
debt.
Yes, but it is at
If
the
you
moment,
decouple the yeah,
right?
but that's
So
what I'm saying is that that's the part of the system that needs to go in the bin. And if you chuck that in the bin and you decouple money from debt,
yeah.
you can start to change everything else in society.
Yes,
And
you
here's a
can.
really good example. This is actually going to segue a little bit into the Tucker Putin interview, but just look at what I mean. I don't know how closely you follow developments in Russia. I mean, personally, I'm a complete addict of the Duran, and I spent half my life trying to keep up with Alexander Mercouris. But one of the things that has absolutely
I have my doubts
made
about him.
it's he's got an eidetic memory. I
Yeah,
tend to
well,
listen to him rather than
that,
watch him because
if he's got an eidetic memory, then he remembers some things completely wrong when he made up those stories.
well, nobody's perfect. Anyway, let's. I don't want
Okay, I'll get you
the
five
point
million.
is it.
I'll get you £5 million. Oh, I've got you
But
50,000.
no, but
Oh, sorry, no, I didn't get any money for you. You're
oh
broke.
well, but he's not the only one. I mean, there's Brian Beletic. There's the Military Summary Channel.
Yeah.
The point. The point that I'm trying to make is about how Russian industry. Because if you look at our military-industrial complex, the one thing that the Ukraine war has proved is that they're all useless.
Hmm.
We've got this massively expensive paper tiger that's
Yeah.
constantly bragging about how amazing our weapon systems are, and you actually put them into a sustained attritional war like the one that the Ukrainians are fighting against the Russians, and all of these high-tech Bradleys and stuff, they go out the window.
Yeah,
And
I know.
what the
Yeah.
soldiers actually want to fight the war with is the old Soviet equipment because it doesn't break down.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the thing about the Russians is that they don't have this privatized military industrial complex. They have a military industrial complex, but it's effectively state owned. And so the whole thing, they build extra capacity into
Mm.
their factories because they've been invaded twice and they're
Yeah.
quite clever.
Yeah.
So they have this spare capacity and they just focus their whole attention on it. And it's not like the whole of Russian society has been devoted to war, but their military industrial complex has definitely ramped up and there's a lot of stuff happening there. And it's evolving at a rate of knots. This is what people in the West aren't taking into account, is that the biggest driver of human technology, technological advancement, is war. Always has been,
Yeah.
always will
Yeah.
be. And what's happening in Russia is that they are exponentially, what's the word, iterating over different designs. It's like you've got different people working on drones, they're modifying their tanks, they've come up with these cages on top of the
Yeah.
tanks to stop the drones. So they're evolving and NATO's standing still. And so I mean, this whole notion that NATO could fight a war with Russia, yeah, we could try, but invading
Yeah.
Russia, as history has proved, is a universally stupid
But
idea.
but this all goes back. This all goes back to the fact that no Western country has fought a peer adversary since World War II.
No, that's true.
You know, so you can't hone your defenses. You can't hone your equipment. It's like a tennis player, right? It's like Novak Djokovic, if he was playing you and I all the time, would get out of shape and would get lazy, and yeah, he would still beat us, and he'd beat us convincingly. But when someone stood up to him that he hadn't played for a while, like what I can only think of Federer or whatever, but I know he's not in the right era. But you know what I mean? He would come and he would wipe the floor with him. And
Hmm.
that's where NATO is, I think. I think that's
I
where our
agree.
military system is, you know?
Mhm. I agree, and I think it's. Um, I mean, I personally don't see Russia as an enemy. I never have. I mean, I remember watching the Berlin Wall coming down with tears streaming down my face. Not live. I could only watch it on TV,
I don't
but it was happening
yeah.
live on TV when I was watching it. And for a few years after that, I thought that there was this real chance because I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and there
Yeah.
was this constant. We still had this threat of
The
nuclear
war.
war. It
Yeah.
was still a Cold War, and
I
when the
wasn't even
Berlin Wall
I
came
wasn't even
down,
I wasn't even allowed to go to a Soviet country.
mm,
Because my dad was in the Navy, I wasn't allowed to go on holiday to a Soviet country.
mhm.
You know,
Well,
like
that makes
because
perfect sense.
everybody used to go to Yugoslavia and things like that, and we couldn't,
Mhm,
because we weren't allowed to.
mm,
But anyway, so the thing is, I don't see Russia as an enemy either. But I think the problem, Ed, is that our governments collectively do see Russia as an enemy, and I'll actually go as far to say as this whole Tucker Putin interview thing is upsetting them immensely because of the very fact that they actually consider themselves at war with Putin right now.
mm, yeah,
Whereas we, the public, the people that actually pay their wages and they should be serving, don't. And I think that's the big problem. They think they're at war with Russia. We know that we're not. And that's why they're freaking out, because they're going to lose control of the narrative. Because
well, this is
he's a genuine-ish guy for a news reporter, and people respect him.
yeah, and he's a good interviewer.
Yeah, he is.
He asks good questions. I'm just as interested in what questions Tucker is going to ask as I am in what sort of answers Putin is going to give. And I mean, I
Mhm.
know, I follow a lot of different sources that follow what Putin is doing, and so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on both the state of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and also the state that Russia is in generally. I mean, I have a few Russian followers on Twitter, particularly Olga Bazova, who, if you're not
Yeah, I've seen it.
following
I
her,
follow her.
Olga she's like a troll mistress. She's amazing, and so much fun. But you get a sense of what it's like for people in Russia. I think partially, I think that's actually one of the reasons why Tucker went there. I don't think he just went to go and interview Putin. I don't think he would have gone had he not been interviewing Putin, or maybe he's gone to interview Edward Snowden. I mean, if it was me and I was going to really rub the deep state up the wrong way, I'd go and do Putin and Snowden and get two birds with one stone, as it were. But I also get a sense, just from the little snippets that I've got, that Tucker was actually interested in what life is like in Moscow and what Russia is like. And I mean, surely that's what journalism's all about. We got people like Steve Rosenberg, who's the BBC Moscow correspondent, who spends all of his time spouting propaganda nonsense, most of it. And it's all designed to make Russia look less superior than we are, and to make Putin look like some sort of big bad dictator. I mean, I've even had one of my friends refer to him as Putler. The level of ignorance is just mind-boggling, because I mean, Putin is not an angel. He's former KGB. You don't get to stay in power in any country unless you have a bit of a ruthless streak. So do I trust him 100%? Absolutely not. I don't trust anyone 100%, but he cares about his country. And somehow, whether I mean, there's people that have said, oh, he's a young global leader. He's done the WEF thing. There's no evidence that he was actually a young global leader. I've looked. But he was definitely invited to Davos, for sure. But I mean, most people get invited.
Yeah, you know the WEF thing, right? Let's be honest about the WEF thing. Right? To me, it's a bit like the Rotary Club, you know?
I think it's a bit more than that.
Yeah, but I don't think it's as entrenched as they'd like to think it is, right? I don't think the people are all beating to Klaus Schwab's tune. I think he'd like to think they were, you know. But I think most people and most people in government are actually working to their own end rather than the WEF.
I agree. I think that this whole notion that Klaus Schwab is some sort of James Bond bad guy who's at the top of the pyramid of some sort of controlling Spectre type organization thing, I don't agree with that at all. I think that Klaus Schwab, if anything, the whole World Economic Forum is it's almost like a public distraction. Yeah. Because you've got groups like the Bilderberg, and you've got much more secret groups of these rich and powerful assholes. I can say asshole, can't I? Yeah, I can say asshole.
Yeah, we're not monetized. We're ad free.
But we have
ad free. Bringing it to you, ad free, no breaks.
But just make sure if one or two of you could drop them some money just to shut him up, that'd be really nice.
And remember,
go on about it.
If you do support us through Ko-fi.com/Chasing Dissent during the show, you can type in a message that will be read out live on air by a suitably computerized voice. Don't bother trying to put in dirty messages though, because there's a blocked word list that's like longer than the Empire State Building. You're right, Ed. You're right, Ed.
Just having a coughing fit. Yeah,
that reminds me. Bad. That reminds me of the start of All In last Friday when I played that little ditty thing. My name is Ed. Edward, actually.
Oh, dear. Anyway, where were we?
Yeah, we were talking about Tucker and Putin. And I mean, you know what? I think it's going to be interesting either way. There's one thing I wanted to talk about briefly, and that's the Miami Mall aliens, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Right. So I was watching a couple of things on YouTube from these guys, Zakov or something his name is, about how he'd gone down to investigate the Miami Mall aliens, and he'd found out some stuff, and he'd got new footage of the aliens. No, he didn't. There are no aliens. But one thing he did come up with that did intrigue me was almost the exact same thing happened almost exactly a year ago. So there was almost exactly the same event happened almost exactly a year ago at the Bayside Mall and involved kids fighting and a massive police presence. And he's saying maybe it's a time slip. And I'm thinking maybe it's the fact that it's a holiday and all these kids have come out after Christmas and New Year to the mall on the one or first or second or third day or whatever that it's opened, and they've ended up in a big fight, and it's just a massive coincidence. What do you think, Ed? You think it's a time slip?
No.
No.
Simply put, I don't. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced about the aliens. I'm not convinced about the time slip. I'm not necessarily at the same time ruling them out completely. I don't like to close my mind off to. No, I wouldn't say anything because there are certain things I don't. There are certain lines I don't think you should cross. But time slip. But no. I mean, it's kids. It's post Christmas.
Well, that's a good
There's
point.
plenty. I mean, I'm a firm believer in Occam's razor,
Yeah.
and it was William of Ockham about 400 years ago. And Occam's razor is very simple. Whatever the simplest explanation is for something is usually the correct answer.
Yeah, and I know it as the KISS principle. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yeah, I like Occam's razor because it makes you sound more clever.
Yes, I know you do, but I like to actually apply the KISS principle.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's there is sometimes if you're seriously analyzing something, you have to be realistic, you have to be objective. But there's also sometimes where it's nice to just go on a flight of fantasy and think, okay,
Well,
some
you
sort of
kind of
time
do.
slip.
You kind of do that all the time, don't you? I mean, like you've been on a right flight of fantasy over the last couple of days with Tucker and Vlad and your memes. You've
Yes.
got
Well,
Tucker on a back of a pterodactyl. Now, here's a question for you, right? How could a pterodactyl possibly fly in today's gravity?
I hadn't even considered it, but Piotr is not just any pterodactyl. He is a giant Russian
Exactly.
cloned. Look,
That's the problem. That's the problem.
He's got a secret underground
Doesn't work.
mountain base
Doesn't work.
near Tula, where he's got some mad scientists that churn out all these giant war animals.
See, this is the problem, right?
Apart from Rasputin the
No,
bald eagle, which defected from Alaska.
I like your memes, but the problem is that in today's gravity, you can't have creatures of this size.
Yeah, but
you just can't have them. They just don't
John,
work.
We're talking about a meme picture of Tucker Carlson riding a pterodactyl, and you're thinking that it's unlikely there would be gravity. It's unlikely that a pterodactyl would actually allow a human to ride it.
Oh,
and
you never
I don't think
know.
I've got the proportions right either.
Probably not.
And I don't know. I mean, there's Leonid the Labradoodles, the giant Labradoodle. I mean, you got
that wouldn't
Gogol
work
the
either.
giraffe. Right?
I mean, look at a Great Dane. You know, they have a really short lifespan because they're so big. You know, they're probably. In fact, anyone over 6'4" has a restricted lifespan because your heart's got to pump so much harder to get the blood up to your brain. Sorry if you're tall. Just how it is. Maybe you should go and live on Mars.
So, out of interest, what is your explanation for why pterodactyls used to be able to fly in the time of the dinosaurs and why they can't now?
I don't know. Somebody said that maybe the Earth span faster. It would need to spin faster, which would be throwing you off it more, which would reduce effective gravity. But gravity, I mean, the whole thing's a mess, right? Because nobody actually knows what gravity is. And effectively, if you believe Einstein and general relativity, gravity just doesn't exist. There can be no such thing as a gravitic particle or a graviton or whatever you want to call it. There can't be gravity waves because it can't exist. Because it's merely a bend in space time. Right?
Well, I
That's
tell
all
you
it
what,
is.
let's do a thought experiment. I'm going to go to Claude.ai and let's ask our AI overlord.
Oh,
Hey Claude.
AI.
No. Hey Claude. What
Who the hell's
is
Claude?
Claude.ai? I like Claude because of all of these different AI companies, Anthropic gave theirs an actual name. I mean,
CLAUD.
OpenAI is just called OpenAI. I mean, ChatGPT,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
kind of
okay.
name is that?
So what's
But
Claude?
Claude is
How's Claude spelled?
it's French,
With the
CLAUDE.
E. Right.
Claude.ai. It's free to use.
Mm.
Right. So Claude says, gravity is a fundamental force of physics that attracts two masses towards each other. Some
Gravity's not a
key things
force.
to know about gravity. Gravity is what keeps us anchored to the earth and
It
causes
doesn't.
objects to fall, blah, blah, blah. Gravity is the weakest of the four fundamental forces
Yeah.
of physics,
So
yet it has an
Claude
infinite range.
doesn't agree with Einstein then. Because Einstein says that
Einstein's theory of no, well, Claude mentions it. Einstein's theory of general relativity explains gravity not as a force, but as a
exactly.
consequence of the curvature of space-time caused by mass. Large masses like the sun warp space-time around them. Gravity is what keeps the planets orbiting around the sun, what keeps the moon orbiting the planets. In a nutshell, the AI has not
Doesn't
told
know.
us what gravity is
Doesn't
because,
know.
well, it only knows what humans
Well,
know. So,
right, okay. So here's the thing, right? And let's forget gravity and forget pterodactyls. Right? Here's the thing that I can't get my head around, and you know, if there's any electricians out there or physicists, help me out here because I can't get my head round electricity. How you can charge for it. Because when people tell you how electricity works, they use the analogy of like a water hose and electrons flowing along the. But that's exactly how electricity doesn't work. Electricity, and this is the thing that gets me. I'm more than happy to pay for gas, right? Because there is a pipe connects my house or building or whatever from the gas station to the house, and the gas flows along that pipe, and I use the gas. It's a product that's delivered to me. Yeah? Right? I'm more than happy to pay for instance, water. There is a pipe from the pumping station that comes all the way unbroken to my house and delivers water to my tap. Right? I'm more than happy to pay for drainage. There is a pipe that leaves my house and goes all the way. Right? Okay? Electricity is not connected to me in any form whatsoever. There is no.
I'm so no. Let me stop you there.
There is
You
no
do know that
connection.
there's a cable that
The
runs from the
cable is
mains.
broken on a number of occasions, right? The cable goes into a transformer, and at the transformer, all it does is wind round a bit of metal, and the other side winds round another bit of metal, and there is no connection between those two cables. Between me and the transforming station. There is no connection between the transforming station and the next transformer that puts it up to the high voltage power lines. There is no connection between the high voltage power line transformer and, as it comes out, the actual generator. There is no physical connection. You can stand in a field with a fluorescent light tube if you're close enough to a transformer or a high voltage power line and light that tube without connecting it to anything. Is that stealing electricity from the electricity company?
I need to see a video of you going into a field and doing that.
Okay. Well, I haven't done it, but you
I mean,
you can do it.
well, Nobody has ever suggested that to me.
So the question is, right? And someone said you're not charged for the electricity, you're charged for the energy. How do you measure that energy? Because the meter is effectively supposed to be measuring the voltage, is it not? So how can you measure energy?
I don't know how an electricity meter works. Dial, look, it could be a little magical dial with a hamster in the thing that just spins
No,
round.
Vaughn's lost it. He says you're physically connected to the earth cable. That doesn't matter.
All I know
Electricity
is that
doesn't flow. Electricity doesn't flow.
Oh yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Very much doesn't.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
I tell you
Mr.
what.
Smartass.
Right. Okay. Here's one thing. Explain this to me. Right. Okay. Wireless charging. Just explain how the electricity flows in wireless charging.
It's magnetic. There's wireless chargers. If you put your phone on it, it makes.
How does
I've got one. It makes a slight magnetic connection. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
So how does the electricity flow? It doesn't flow. See, when you use a battery. Here's the point. Right. So the point is,
are you trying to make?
I don't know. Because here's the thing. Right. Here's the thing. See, when you use a battery, okay? Use a battery up. Weigh it. Right. Recharge it. And the weight doesn't change. Now, if you use a gallon of diesel to power your car, right, you can weigh it before you start, and you can weigh the gallon after you've started, and there's nothing left. It's used the stored energy in that gallon of diesel, but the battery apparently hasn't used anything. Because no weight has changed. It hasn't got heavier and it hasn't got lighter. So where is that coming from? No, electricity is not passing from one electron to the next. It doesn't. How can that happen in a wireless charger?
I'm not a physicist. We need to get someone on to explain it. But what I do know,
see, it's a tricky one though, isn't it?
Well. Yeah, but from personal experience.
Does mine not end? Because it doesn't. See, the problem is you've got very famous and very intelligent guys like James Clerk Maxwell, right? Oliver Heaviside and Nikola Tesla saying electrons don't exist.
Well, something happens.
Oh, yes, something does happen, but...
Okay, I have a really good experiment for you, and this was something I mistakenly did as a naive little child coming from Africa and never having experienced one before. My mum one summer took us out for a swim on a canal near where we lived, and I needed to go for a wee, and there was a fence, and so I just went to the fence.
Oh, you peed on an electric fence?
You peed on an electric fence. This was not a pleasant experience. So, explain to
so does that explain
me,
that explains your atrophied part?
What? No, nothing atrophied about it. If you must know. God, you're so Scottish. I really Scottish people like you. Are you just a particularly obnoxious example of one?
Oh, come on. You've sat and had a drink with me. You know what I'm like.
Yeah, but that was out there even for you. Can we change the subject, please? Jesus. This is degenerating. Have we still got an audience? So we
we've got 40 viewers currently. They're loving this. Vaughn says it's a field perturb. It's a
John, you keep echoing and not echoing.
Sorry. It's a perturbation.
Can you shout? I think there's something else picking sound up.
No, it's probably oh my God, maybe. Hold on. Did I have the speakers on?
I don't know, but as soon as you start raising your voice, you start echoing.
Right, so, yeah, okay, let's move on to something else. Oh.
Oh dear. Right. So we were supposed to be talking about Putin and Tucker, and I mean,
Are we
just
still talking
the
about them?
reaction. Well, we've got it's 22. It's nearly 20 minutes past 10,
Mhm.
so we have 40 minutes until it all kicks
Oh,
off, and
okay.
we're gonna have to finish the show a bit before that because I need to go to the loo before it starts. But it's like, to be honest, it's like getting it's like what is it, World Wrestling Federation or
Huh?
a pay-per-view boxing match or something. And I'm fascinated to see what's said, but I'm equally fascinated to see whether the internet goes down just before it starts.
Um, I, I,
Um,
I would take a bet
or
on that. I'd take a bet on the internet breaking at some point.
well,
Um,
the only thing that the West has got left is narrative. When you
but
think about it, we haven't got an
yeah,
industry left. A lot of the vaunted Western science is all paid for nonsense. That whether you've got scientists telling them whatever the funders want them to say.
yeah.
Um,
So
you got
I've
journalists that
sorry.
don't even understand what journalism is anymore. Um, but they've only got their narrative left, and Tucker is. I mean, they've already said you can't. Did you see that interview with the U.S. spokesman saying, "Oh, well, it's Putin. You can't believe a word he says. He just tells lies."
Yeah,
But when
okay,
you're
but
actually, I mean,
but
but this is why the interview is nice. People will see what he's saying because it's like when you can see a person
yeah,
speak. Okay,
yeah,
you might not be in the same room with him,
yeah. You
but
know,
you can still see. You
well,
can see his eyes. You can get an
you get a feel for them.
impression
Yeah,
of. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So the question is it Tucker Carlson has the interview, right? And all these other people said they've been trying to get an interview, like your pal from the BBC, like the lead from
He's not my friend, by
yeah,
the way.
it's a colloquialism, right? So like the guy from the
Bad
BBC,
one.
like oh for God's sake, don't be so sensitive. Like the guy from the BBC, like the lead from CNN, they've all been on tweeting about how they've been trying to get an interview with Putin. So if they'd got an interview with Putin, would we have the same outrage? Would we have the same consternation that we've got just now? No, I don't
Of
think we
course
would. Of
not,
course not.
because they're all part of the club, which we're not part of, and Tucker's probably not part of. Um, and they because none of those, whether it's BBC or CNN
Oh,
or Fox or whoever got the interview, they would not go in interested in what Putin had to say or wanting to give him a chance to talk to a bigger audience that hadn't heard him before. They would go in with an agenda.
yeah,
Their whole
yeah,
point would be to be able to gather as many different clips of him saying, trying to like the verbal traps that BBC journalists love to use,
yeah,
where
yeah,
they try and maneuver you into saying something by asking leading questions rather than just
yeah,
asking a question and letting you talk. Or another thing that BBC journalists really love doing is being really argumentative and talking over the person that they're interviewing.
yeah.
And then what they do is they would take that back and they would spend a week editing it and making literally tailoring the entire thing to make the interviewee look as bad as possible in order to just sustain the narrative. And for all his faults,
Oh,
I
right.
don't think
Hold
that's what
on.
Tucker is going to do.
Hold on. Apparently, Ed is a Dalek. So we didn't have this problem on Monday, but you stay there. I'm going to try something, okay? We'll lose the sound for a minute, people, but we should still be good to go once this is over. So, what would you call it? Fingers crossed. Yeah, right, here we go. Ed. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Am I
Right,
still
people, how we
Adonic?
doing? Adam says it's all because I don't pay for my electric.
5.5. What does 5.5 mean?
5.5,
Okay,
it's
so
in the pipe,
we're
5 by
back.
5, right?
So
you
he's
you ever
fixed it
watched
this time.
Aliens? We're on the express elevator to hell. We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Oh, yeah, but that was 5.5, not 5 by 5.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
but
take things too
he
literally.
means 5 by 5. Right. So the we're back. We're back. So what was I going to ask? I was going to right. What's his name?
Tucker.
Funky. Yeah, no, hold on, no. Funky. Well, I need to go back. I need to go back in the chat. Gunky Fadgets said, "What about a top 5 favourite questions to Putin from each of us? What would you ask Putin if you were interviewing him?" That's a good question.
That is actually a very good question. I'm going
it's
to need
hard.
to think about it for a minute. You know what? I think I would actually go all rabbit hole and ask him why the Russians had never been to the moon. So I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah,
It's one of the.
That's a
It's
good
actually
question.
one of the key things for me when I was doing the moon landing research for our podcast. That there's a few things that I came across.
Yeah, but what if he turned round? What if he turned round and said, "We have."
Or what you think we're not there right now? I mean, it's okay. No, I could get that, but I'm genuinely interested why the Russians managed to go from being at least 10 years ahead of the Americans in space technology. I mean, they put the first satellite into orbit, they put the first person into space, they put the first dog into space, the first woman into space, and then suddenly the Americans get to the moon first.
Yeah.
But the Russians have never followed it up, not in all of those years, and I'm just super curious as to why.
So a follow up question then from me would be to Putin, on the back of Ed's question would be, do you think that the Americans actually landed on the moon?
Interesting. Yeah, that would be. So if let's rewind, and if you had the question to ask him, I'll then ask a follow up based on that.
Right. Okay. So if I had a question to ask him, I would ask. I would ask why he still wants to work with the West when the West have proven nothing but disingenuous and untrustworthy.
I actually think it's because he knows on some level that actually us lot, i.e. the people, not the idiots in charge, are actually the same as the people in Russia. And that what
you're
we
not
would
meant to
like,
be answering the question. You're meant to be
well,
asking.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's a good point. My follow-up question would be, would he be willing to organize a rescue mission, i.e. an invasion? And if he does, then could I please nominate either Maria Zakharova or Dmitry Medvedev as the new leader of the United Kingdom? Because people, I mean, I like the pro-Ukrainian and 77th trolls accuse me occasionally of being a Putin sympathizer or a Russian troll. I'd like to make it clear that I'm none of those things. I am if Russia invaded, I'd consider it a rescue mission and sign me up.
So obviously I would also ask Putin if he would like to support us at kofi.com/Dissent.
You're terrible. Oh dear. Oh well. No, I get it. And I would like to point out to all the listeners with my money grubbing friend that I actually do
I'm
everything.
not money grabbing. I'm trying to live.
Any money.
I could understand if I was like some kind of rich influencer type guy. But no, I'm here at the bottom end of YouTube. I am less than a minnow. I don't even think you would consider us tadpoles at this point, right? So we are grubbing around and we are eating everybody else's shit. That's
No,
effectively
we're
what
not.
Ben.
We're actually creating some really
Yeah,
fun
I know
original
we're
content.
creating some good stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, we're right at the bottom. So you know what happens? Shit flows down.
Well, that's positive. You're always such a ray of sunshine, John. I said
Yeah.
this to you earlier on Twitter.
So
Ah,
right. So have we had enough questions on Putin, or do you want more?
I don't know. Does anyone? I'm interested
Well, some
in
of them said
whether anyone in the chat
Ben
has
would
had
ask him to
any.
subscribe to Chasing Dissent. Julie C says, "What was in the football Mr. T received from him?" Spencer says, "Ben would ask Putin if
Where's
he would like and
Shalini?
subscribe." Oh, she'll be sleeping by now. Silent Slipper says, "Oh, that's a new name, Silent Slipper. What's he think of the West theorists? I.e., Ike, Alex Jones, if he's heard of them." Spencer says, "What about asking him if he knows what really happened to John McAfee?" Nice one, Spencer. Yvonne says she's asleep. Yep.
Chernobyl. Julie C says something about Chernobyl. What he knows about 9/11.
Yeah.
That would actually be that would be an interesting question. What Putin knows about 9/11.
And Rob says the Russians landed on the moon first but never made it back. They died there, and that's probably a possibility.
It would be interesting if it would actually be interesting to ask him, going back to the moon landing, why, if on the assumption that the Americans never went to the moon, why the Russians never just massively embarrassed them.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I've wondered myself as well. I'm not sure he'd necessarily have an answer, but...
Well, do you think it's maybe that if they embarrassed the Americans by saying you never got there, the Americans would say, well, we know you did and your guys are still there.
And Gunky Fadget says, I'd ask how close he thinks Russia is to the way Western media depicts it. I think he knows that already. I mean, you don't have to spend a huge amount of time watching like Western satellite feeds. You just have to watch the BBC or CNN or listen to some of the press conferences that these gormless, brainless idiots actually give. I mean, that US press secretary, I'm sorry, but I just said it on Twitter. It's one of my most popular tweets this week. Does she even have a brain?
Yeah.
I mean, and the one today, it's just you can't. Never in my wildest imagination would I have thought that the United States would be reduced to being this propaganda spewing tin pot dictatorship. I mean, it's the American media reminds me of Pravda back in the 80s. There was Pravda and Izvestia, which were the mouthpieces of the Soviet government.
I feel quite.
And I mean, I went to Dresden. We did a school trip to Dresden and Prague actually about 6 months roughly before the Berlin Wall came down. And I mean, late stage communist Dresden was grim. We had this. It was about 4 hours to get through the border, and then we stopped at this town just on the other side.
Yeah.
And it was pissing with rain, and it was sort of twilight. I mean, it's getting dark, and the rain had this really weird, chemically sort of smell to it. And you literally stand out in the rain, and your clothes stank, and your hair stank. It was really strange. But there was just this grey air of kind of depression about the place. I mean, it wasn't fun at all, and it was because in the center of Dresden, obviously there was the firebombing, and there was this famous church. I can't remember the name of the church, but it was turned to rubble pretty much. There was a couple of walls standing, and the communists had left it as a kind of memorial to Allied bombing, and I think it's since been rebuilt. But it's things like Dresden make you realize that we're not always the good guys. and this is
Oh
something
yeah, yeah.
particularly.
Well,
I mean, this is.
of course we'll not.
And actually, I think this is, if we're thinking about the Putin Tucker interview, I think that's a point that needs to be made. That maybe one of the things that they're scared about is that they have spent at least 20 years demonizing Putin, and it
Yeah,
doesn't get much airtime. But actually, maybe they're worried that people are going to look at him and think, "Hang on a minute, he's actually all right. This is someone that I could respect, and this is someone that I could actually. Oh shit! Hang on a minute, I respect him more than I do my own leaders. Oh dear."
yeah. See, well,
And
and that's going to be the problem because let's be honest. I mean, unless you are like a blind half-wit, how can you not see what Biden is like these days? How can you not see how the Democrats are?
it's getting worse too. I
I
mean, that
know.
last interview where he couldn't
Oh,
he couldn't remember Hamas's name. He thought he was
it,
talking to
did,
Chancellor Kohl, or
yeah, but
I
did you
mean,
hear him the other day? He said that he'd spoke to Francois Mitterrand. Francois Mitterrand died in 1996.
I know. And then you think it made me realize that because when you look at Kamala Harris, she's one of the least talented, least pleasant, most idiotic people that I've ever met. And I've often wondered why they put that she was put forward as vice president. As bad as Biden gets, you wouldn't want Kamala Harris, so they're not going to invoke. What's that
I still
amendment? Is
think,
the 25th? Because there's an amendment which says
yeah,
that
I know, I know,
it's like
yeah,
they get rid of your president
yeah,
amendment, where
yeah.
if the president's faculties, if he's in the state that Biden is, this is when you invoke this amendment, because this guy, he doesn't even know if he can't remember Hamas's name, and worse, actually, from a presidential standpoint, he didn't know where his own Secretary of Defense was for at least a week,
Oh
when
God, I
you've got
know.
at least two major
Yeah,
conflicts going on
yeah,
that the United States is involved in. And at the time, during that week, there was also attacks on US personnel in um, the Middle East.
yeah.
Can you imagine Putin not knowing where Shoigu was
Oh,
for
I know, I know,
more than 24 hours,
I know,
or
I know.
not being in contact with him? I mean,
Crazy, mate,
uh,
crazy.
but then, oh, hang on, I've just remembered it. Did you see that picture of the meeting that Biden was in, where they had to turn all of the people's name
Yes,
tags
yes, I
on,
did.
so that they would.
So he knew who he
I,
was talking to.
I mean,
Uh,
I mean,
uh, Ed likes ice cream. Okay. Right. Okay. I think we're going to wind it up soon, Ed.
yeah, no, we
Couple of
should.
things. Couple of things. Because the big interview's coming and we want to watch that. Uh, anyone who's on the chat that doesn't follow me on Twitter, I like what you're saying, so I'd like to be able to engage with you. If you don't want to follow me, that's fine, but you'll find me through Ed, because I'm a collator. So I'm always talking to Ed, so you'll always find my link through there. Yeah, Ed. And the next thing is, thank you everyone for attending this. Ed, there's something that I have to bring up, right? So
Yep.
there was a and I know you like birds. I don't know what your feelings are on pigeons, but I think this is quite important. There was a pigeon, a Taiwanese racing pigeon, that was incarcerated in India for eight
China.
months.
Was it
No,
was it
no,
India or
it
China?
was incarcerated in India for 8 months on the suspicion of being a Chinese spy. What do you think of that?
I I think the Indians they're either a bit mental, or they have discovered a method of communicating with pigeons, or It might be a rare Russian talking pigeon.
Oh. Should we expect a meme at some point?
Quite possibly.
Okay. Right. Guys, thanks very much for attending this show tonight. I've had a great time, Ed.
Oh, it's been loads of fun, as always, and it's been nice to see the chat so active. And
Yeah,
thank you guys for coming along. It's been good fun.
Brilliant. And as always, if anything, you know, then we're going to watch this Tucker interview now. But I'm pretty sure it's been great for you.
Big rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with, now they looking nervously. And I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better. See, I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet next to me. I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. I can't contain it, I'm coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer. What you say? Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.